Norman's life was a complex tapestry woven with both success and sorrow. His 7-year-old daughter, Jessica, was the singular light brightening his challenging days. One morning, as the first rays of sunlight spilled into their home, Jessica gently stroked his hair and whispered, "Daddy, it's time to wake up. We have a big day ahead. Come on, we can't be late for school." Jessica, still cocooned in the warmth of her blankets, rubbed her sleepy eyes and mumbled, "Just 5 more minutes, Dad. And please, no cereal for breakfast, okay? I really don't want to go to Norman's office after school. It's so boring." Norman, ever the devoted father, responded with a mix of firmness and tenderness. "No cereal today. I made toast with your favorite jam. And about the office, Amelia will pick you up after school. You're too young to stay home alone, sweetheart, especially since the babysitter is still unwell. Let's get moving, Angel. I'll be waiting for you at breakfast." Despite his opulent lifestyle as one of the city's premier architects, Norman's days were meticulously planned and unrelenting. Mornings began with school drop-offs and transitioned seamlessly into an avalanche of meetings, design projects, and endless negotiations. These often stretched long into the evening, leaving little room for personal moments with Jessica. Since his painful divorce from Layla and the betrayal by Jason, his former business partner, Norman had buried himself in work. Founding his own architectural firm, after the collapse of his partnership, was a daring but draining endeavor. Rebuilding from the ground up, he managed to recover a few loyal clients stolen by Jason and forged valuable new connections in nearby cities. With such grueling workdays, Norman found himself increasingly distant from Jessica. Many afternoons he had no choice but to bring her along to Norman's office after school. He hated the necessity, but feared leaving her alone at home. The thought of her loneliness weighed heavily on him, deepening his resolve to make their lives whole again. That morning, as Jessica reluctantly rose from bed, Norman reflected on how much their world had changed. His once perfect family had shattered, leaving him to rebuild not only his career but also the very foundation of their lives. Yet, in Jessica's laughter and her gentle presence, he found strength, a reason to push forward. Norman hadn't realized how quickly the day had slipped away until Amelia arrived at Norman's office with his daughter, Jessica, after her ballet class. Jessica, slouched in a chair, idly talked about school, sharing snippets about her grades before nervously asking, "Dad, I don't want to stay here in your office. It's so boring. Can I call Mom and go to her place? You can pick me up later. I miss her. She hasn't called in a while." Norman sighed heavily, the weight of his daughter's longing pressing on his heart. "Jessica," he said gently, "of course you can call her. She's your mom after all. But I'm not sure she'll have time for you. She's always busy with other things." Jessica's hopeful expression dimmed as she picked up her phone and slowly dialed. "Hi, Mom. It's been a while since you called, so I thought I'd check in. Maybe we could go for ice cream or something? I really miss you." After a pause, Layla's uneasy voice came through the phone. "Sweetheart, not today. I've got so much going on right now. Maybe this weekend, if I find some free time, I'll give you a call, all right?" Jessica's face fell, her lips puckering in quiet disappointment. Norman's heart ached for her. She simply wanted her mother's attention, but Layla seemed incapable of giving it. Determined to lift her spirits, Norman winked and said, "You know what? Let's forget all this for a while. How about a massive 3-scoop ice cream sundae with chocolate syrup, strawberry sauce, and sprinkles? What do you say?" Jessica's eyes brightened, a smile spreading across her face. As they indulged in the towering treat, she began chatting excitedly about her day. Later, while she settled into her homework, Norman left for an important meeting, feeling a rare moment of peace, knowing she was content. When Norman returned, he found Jessica sound asleep on the office couch, wrapped snugly in blankets. He brewed a strong coffee and sank into his leather chair, letting his thoughts drift. His mind wandered to dreams he had for Jessica, of a life brimming with opportunities he never had growing up. Norman's childhood was a stark contrast to his current success. Born into a family fraught with conflict and scarcity, Love and encouragement were rare commodities. His father's frequent absences and struggles with alcohol left his mother overburdened, too exhausted to provide the warmth Norman craved. Yet, amidst the chaos, Norman's sharp intellect and natural talent for architecture began to shine. At school, his teachers praised his creativity and dedication, while they quietly nurtured a passion for sketching buildings and creating designs. Despite financial struggles, he entered architectural competitions, crafting ingenious designs with modest resources. His efforts stood out, but when Norman shared his ambitions, his mother dismissed them. "Norman, stop wasting time on dreams that won't pay the bills. Be practical. Be a doctor or a lawyer, something real." Undeterred, Norman clung to his aspirations. Determined to rewrite his destiny, he left his small hometown with little more than grit and a scholarship. He worked tirelessly waiting tables, selling goods, even taking shifts as a doorman to fund his education in architecture. His relentless dedication paid off when he met Layla, a talented interior design student. She was radiant, driven, and ambitious, capturing Norman's heart almost instantly. Together, they dreamed of building a life and business, a vision that seemed within reach when they married and opened an architectural firm. Layla's artistic flair complemented Norman's innovative designs, and their business flourished. But as success grew, so did the cracks in their relationship. Layla, feeling neglected by Norman's relentless work ethic, drifted emotionally, especially after Jessica's birth. Desperate for attention, Layla sought solace elsewhere, her dissatisfaction leading her to Jason. Norman, unaware of the storm brewing, introduced Jason as a new partner in their firm, hoping to expand their success. Jason's charisma and keen business sense captivated Layla, and what began as harmless conversations soon crossed a line. One evening, after hours at the office, Jason invited Layla to dinner. Though hesitant at first, Layla found herself charmed by his attentiveness. Their relationship quickly spiraled into a secret affair. Layla concocted excuses for her increasing absences, claiming she needed breaks to cope with the pressures of motherhood. In truth, she spent those nights with Jason, leaving Norman to shoulder not just his work, but also the emotional weight of their crumbling marriage. As Layla's betrayal deepened, so did her neglect of Jessica. What began as fleeting absences grew into a chasm, alienating her from both her daughter and husband. Yet Norman, ever hopeful, clung to the idea of salvaging their family, unaware that the foundation had already shattered. Layla's affair with Jason consumed her attention, leaving little space for her responsibilities as a wife to Norman or a mother to Jessica. Jason's charm and their secretive relationship absorbed her completely, while her real family faded into the background. Meanwhile, Norman began to sense an unsettling shift. His once loving marriage had become distant and cold. Nights dragged on, filled with loneliness and creeping doubts. He tried to address the growing gap, initiating heartfelt conversations with Layla to understand her behavior, but she always brushed him off with empty excuses and deflections. The warmth and tenderness that once defined their family life had vanished. Despite the mistrust gnawing at him, Norman clung to the hope that this was just a rough patch. He believed that Layla could rediscover the love they once shared and return to being the partner she used to be. For Jessica's sake, he resisted the thought of divorce, determined to keep her family whole. But when Jessica turned 5, everything came crashing down. Layla, unable to juggle her double life any longer, made a life-altering decision. She left Norman and Jessica behind, leaving only a hastily written note. "I'm sorry, but I can't live like this anymore. I've been in love with Jason for a long time and no longer feel anything for you, Norman. I'll be filing for divorce." Norman was crushed. Layla's betrayal and sudden departure left a void so deep he wasn't sure how to fill it. How could he explain to Jessica that her mother had chosen someone else over them? To make matters worse, Jason was not just another man, he had been Norman's trusted business partner. The nights that followed were the hardest. Norman tried to comfort Jessica, to shield her from the pain he was enduring, but he often found himself overwhelmed with his own despair. Matters only worsened during the divorce proceedings. where Norman discovered Jason had exploited loopholes to transfer most of the company's assets to himself, betraying not only Norman's trust but also their professional partnership. Amid the whirlwind of losses, Norman clung to one small consolation: the house, a sanctuary for him and Jessica, had remained theirs. Refusing to let this heartbreak define him, Norman resolved to rebuild his life. Despite whispers of pity and ridicule in the community, he focused on moving forward, determined to create a brighter future for his daughter. Norman threw himself into his work, becoming both a father and mother to Jessica. He ensured she felt loved, supported, and cared for, even as he wrestled with his own heartache. Seeking a fresh start, he reignited his passion for sustainable architecture, founding a firm dedicated to transforming waste into innovative designs. With the backing of loyal friends and the local community, Norman began to see hope emerge. His projects revolutionized the city's approach to construction, turning mountains of waste into something purposeful. The mayor publicly commended Norman for his contributions, recognizing his role in reshaping the city's landscape. As Norman reclaimed his professional footing, his personal life began to stabilize. Yet the relentless pace of work threatened to create new cracks. In his determination to secure a better future, Norman occasionally found himself neglecting the very person he was working so hard for: Jessica. One afternoon, as Norman wrestled with these thoughts, a knock at the door interrupted him. Glancing at Jessica, peacefully napping on the couch, he opened the door, only to be pulled back into the present moment. Soon after, Jessica awoke, rubbing her sleepy eyes and turning her attention to her homework. But boredom quickly set in. Jessica gazed out the window, longing for adventure beyond the walls of Norman's office. With a burst of curiosity, she slipped out unnoticed, exploring the bustling streets until she stumbled upon a park. The inviting sight of swings and slides was too tempting to resist, and she eagerly dashed toward them. Her brief escape took a frightening turn when the screech of car brakes filled the air. A firm grip pulled her back onto the sidewalk just in time. Shaken and tearful, Jessica looked up to see a disheveled woman, her hair tangled and clothes worn, but her eyes kind. "Sweetheart, you have to be careful crossing the street," the woman said gently. "That was a close call, but you're okay now. What's your name?" Between sniffles, Jessica answered, "I'm Jessica." "Where's your mom, Jessica? Why are you alone out here?" "My dad's working in that building," she replied, pointing toward the office. "I just wanted to play for a little bit. He's going to be so mad at me." The woman knelt to Jessica's level, offering a warm smile. "Don't worry, sweetheart. Let's get you back to your dad before he even knows you were gone." Taking the woman's hand, Jessica walked back toward Norman's office, her heart a mix of fear and gratitude. Little did she know, this chance encounter would soon intertwine their lives in ways neither could have imagined. When Norman returned to Norman's office, the first thing he noticed was that Jessica wasn't there. A wave of panic washed over him as he began to berate himself for losing track of his daughter. Desperately, he scoured the building, checking every room, office, and bathroom. Yet there was no trace of her. Jessica was typically meticulous about asking permission before leaving and usually stayed with Amelia, Norman's secretary. Still shaken, Norman quickly called Amelia to help him search. As they stepped outside, relief turned to confusion when they spotted Jessica walking hand in hand with a poorly dressed woman who appeared to be homeless. Norman rushed toward them, shouting, "Who are you? What are you doing with my daughter? Step away from her right now, or I'll call the police." Before he could say more, Jessica interrupted, her voice trembling. "Dad, don't yell. This lady saved me. A car nearly hit me on the street. I didn't see it. I'm sorry, but thank goodness she was there to pull me back onto the sidewalk. Please don't be mad at her. I promise I'll never go out alone again." Overcome with emotion, Norman knelt to embrace his daughter tightly. "Jessica, my love, you scared me so much. Don't ever do that again. Do you understand how dangerous that was? You are the most precious thing in my life, and I can't let anything happen to you, my angel." Norman then turned his gaze to the stranger, guilt creeping into his voice. "Ma'am, please forgive me for shouting. I acted without understanding what had happened. Thank you so much for saving my daughter. I left the office for just a moment, and when I came back, she was gone. I'm forever in your debt." Reaching into his wallet, Norman offered her cash, but the woman shook her head firmly. "No, sir. I don't want your money. I helped out of kindness, not expecting anything in return. If you truly want to help me, I'd appreciate a job. That would mean more than anything a real chance to start fresh." She hesitated before continuing, her voice tinged with sadness. "I'm ready to do any kind of work. I just want a chance to turn my life around. I can't keep living like this." Norman, struck by her sincerity, paused to consider. He quietly turned to Amelia and said, "What if we hire her? With the increase in projects, having an extra pair of hands could be beneficial." Amelia frowned, clearly skeptical. "You're the boss, Norman, but I don't trust her. What if she starts stealing or brings other problems to the office?" Norman nodded thoughtfully. "You might be right. But let's give her a trial period a month or two. She saved Jessica's life. She deserves a chance." Turning back to the woman, Norman asked, "What's your name? Do you have ID? Would you be willing to work as an assistant in our office?" The woman smiled faintly, her eyes filled with gratitude. "My name is Janet. Yes, I have my ID with me. Thank you for this opportunity. I'll do my very best, whatever you ask of me." "Pleased to meet you," Janet, Norman said warmly. "I'm Norman, the lead architect here. You'll work closely with Amelia, who will guide you. Be here tomorrow at 8, and we'll get you started." Janet began working at Norman's office the next day. She approached her role with dedication, professionalism, and humility, earning admiration from many in the team. With her first paycheck, she bought new clothes, got a haircut, and rented a modest room. It was a fresh start she cherished deeply. Over time, Janet and Jessica grew close. Jessica confided in Janet, sharing her joys and struggles. Janet, in turn, found immense fulfillment in being a comforting presence in Jessica's life. Their bond grew stronger with each passing day. Norman was soon impressed by Janet's diligence and initiative. However, not everyone shared his enthusiasm. Amelia, who had long harbored feelings for Norman, grew increasingly uneasy about Janet's presence. She viewed Janet as a threat not just to her professional space, but also to her personal aspirations of becoming closer to Norman. Fueled by jealousy, Amelia devised a plan to discredit Janet. One day, she asked Janet to retrieve some files. Minutes later, Amelia stormed into Norman's office, her voice sharp and accusatory. "Norman, we have a problem. I left Janet alone with some confidential documents, and she was snooping. What if she plans to sell them? I warned you about hiring someone like her." Norman, startled by the accusation, immediately confronted Janet. She stood firm, her voice steady but hurt. "I haven't done anything wrong, Mr. Norman. If you don't trust me, I'd rather leave than be falsely accused. I refuse to be blamed for something I didn't do, or worse, end up in jail." Norman studied her carefully, torn between Amelia's claims and his instincts. "I'll get to the bottom of this," he assured Janet, his voice resolute. "Until then, no decisions will be made." As he began to investigate, Norman couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story than Amelia was letting on. It was only a matter of time before the truth would come to light, and Janet's integrity would face its ultimate test. That same day, Norman's daughter, Jessica, happened to be in Norman's office and witnessed Amelia's actions firsthand. She timidly stepped forward, her voice trembling but firm, to reveal the truth to her father. "Dad, Janet is innocent. I saw Amelia messing with the documents. She wanted to frame Janet because she doesn't like her. I saw everything." Jessica continued, "I was under the table when Amelia called Janet over to the files. Then she started yelling at her." Norman, stunned by his daughter's account, crouched to her level and said warmly, "Thank you, Jessica. Do you remember when this happened? You're my little detective now. You've helped solve something really important. I'm so proud of you." Grateful for his daughter's courage, Norman immediately reviewed the office security footage. The evidence confirmed Jessica's account Janet was innocent. With a heavy heart, Norman confronted Amelia. "Why did you do this?" he asked, his voice a mixture of disappointment and anger. "You've worked with me for so long. What could possibly drive you to such behavior?" After a long, defiant pause, Amelia sneered, "Because she's a nobody, a worthless, dirty outsider. I wanted to teach her a lesson." Her words cut deep, leaving Norman both furious and disheartened. Trust, once broken, was impossible to repair. Without hesitation, he terminated Amelia's employment. Turning to Janet, who had silently endured the ordeal, Norman spoke with conviction. "Janet, thank you for your patience. I should have trusted you from the start. I'm sorry this happened." Janet nodded, her voice filled with gratitude. "Thank you for believing in me, Mr. Norman. I really didn't do anything wrong. I've been trying so hard to build a normal life again. I know I might not fit in yet, but I'm working to prove I belong." Moved by her sincerity, Norman hesitated before asking, "Forgive my curiosity, but I can't help wondering, how did you end up in such difficult circumstances? You don't seem like someone who'd belong on the streets. What happened?" Janet exhaled, gathering her thoughts before beginning her story. "It's a long tale, but my life has always been a roller coaster of ups and downs. I never knew my mom, and my dad was consumed by drinking. Still, I thought I had a regular childhood, even though our home smelled of alcohol and cigarettes. My dad brought different women around, and it pushed me to avoid anything like that." She paused, her voice steady but laden with emotion. "After school, I enrolled in a community college and worked several jobs. I eventually started my own business, and for a while I was successful. I even met someone who seemed like my perfect partner. But after we married, he betrayed me in the worst way. He took everything, all my money, and disappeared. I was left with nothing. My business collapsed, the bills piled up, and eventually I lost my home." She wiped a tear away. "It's hard to explain how low I felt. But saving Jessica, it gave me a glimmer of hope. It reminded me I still have something to give, something to rebuild for. Now, I'm trying to start over, to find a life of stability, and maybe one day start a family of my own. I just want to make a difference." Norman, deeply moved, said, "It's remarkable how similar our stories are. I didn't have an easy upbringing either. My wife left me for someone I trusted, my business partner, Jason. Not only did he betray me personally, but he also took a chunk of my life's work. It was devastating." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Jessica still misses her mother, but Layla hasn't shown much interest. The last time she visited Jessica was months ago. It's been hard, but I've managed to pull through. You've already shown you have the strength to change. That's what matters most.